Hey there, Mr. Redder here. Welcome back to another episode of r/entitled People Stories. Our first story we'll be reading today. HOA neighbor keeps harassing me, finally gets a taste of her own medicine. After that, am I the jerk for saying no to my boss after she asked me to watch her kids this weekend? And after that, won't compensate me for my fence? Then compensate me 100 times as much for my crops. Now for every thumbs up this video gets, one Karen gets reported to the HOA. Not if I report you first. So please smash that like button and subscribe and turn on notifications for new stories from Reddit every single day. HOA neighbor keeps harassing me, finally gets a taste of her own medicine. I bought my first house in 1999 and I wanted DirecTV. I put up a satellite dish, which happened to be behind a privacy fence. I also knew the FCC ruling that HOAs couldn't prevent you from putting up a dish due to some issue with home builders who would make shady deals with cable companies to force homeowners to go with a specific company. I figured I wouldn't have any issues since it was behind a fence anyway. I got a knock at my door the next day, and it was my neighbor from across the cul-de-sac telling me she's on the board of the HOA. Your dish is in violation and must be removed. This was my first encounter with her. I politely explained the law as I knew it and told her to have a nice day. We didn't speak again and she ended up moving out soon. Well, it turns out she didn't move out and was just renting to some other lady that I never spoke to, and the HOA lady moved back a year later. There was an easement behind my house which was properly mowed when I moved in. I would hit golf balls down there with my wedge, and my neighbor was into archery and used it as his range. By the second summer I lived there, it was overgrown and an eyesore. I couldn't even see the creek just behind my house anymore. One weekend, I borrowed my dad's utility trailer and I spent 3 days clearing out our little section behind the houses, hauling all of the debris away, probably 2 trips a day. My arms were covered in cuts from the briars, and apparently I was also dealing with sumac, poison ivy, and some other stuff because by Monday I was having an allergic reaction so badly that I went to the doctor to get a shot. Laid up in the house all day and I got a knock at the door. It's the neighbor again. Apparently, there's a rule that you cannot store a trailer in the driveway for more than 3 days, and this was day 4. I needed to remove it by the end of the day or face a $500 fine. She handed me a paper listing the rule, and I considered just paying the fine, but instead, I angrily drove an hour each way to return my dad's trailer after spending half the day already waiting in a hospital lobby. I got home after dark. What struck me as odd was that there was a list of things you couldn't store in your driveway: personal watercraft, boats, trailers, etc. The odd part was that motorcycle was listed on there. I don't ride one myself, but I thought it was a totally reasonable thing to keep in a driveway. After I finished all of this work, this woman would routinely walk through my yard without asking, but since she was taking her grandkid to play in the creek, I never said anything even though it bothered me she never asked. A year or so later, I wanted to sell the house and move into something bigger. I had talked to a realtor already, and I was getting things tidied up to have the house shown. As I was cleaning out a drawer, I noticed that paper the HOA lady had given me, and I remembered the part about motorcycles being listed. You see, the HOA lady had started dating an older gentleman, and he had moved in with her. Turns out he rode a Harley, which was always parked in her driveway. She was home, so I walked over there and politely informed her about the violation. The next day, the motorcycle was parked on her back porch, the one she bragged about to everyone who would listen, so she could tell them how much it cost. I laughed to myself, but then I remembered the part about it needing to be behind a fence. Another knock at the door, and within a few days, a fence company was building a 6-foot privacy fence which completely hid her fancy new deck. My realtor had been on my case for at least a week about needing to put up a for sale sign, so as soon as the fence was finished, I told her it was okay. I sold the house quickly and moved out at the end of the month. Oh, and by the way, the fence was completely hideous and looked out of place because of the way her lot was shaped. Am I the jerk for saying no to my boss after she asked me to watch her kids this weekend? So I'm 22, female, and my sister is getting married this coming weekend, and I will be gone Thursday through Sunday. I've had this known that I was going to be gone for 7 months. 7 months. I would even remind every month or so just so I knew that she knew. I nanny 2 amazing kids who are 6 and 8. This is the first time I have ever asked to have some time off. My boss has always been like, "Oh yeah, sure, sounds like a beautiful wedding." However, I got a text 2 hours ago saying she really needed me this weekend and she couldn't find anyone else. I was upset, but I know how to act calm, since, it's my job to stay happy and calm. I texted her back a quick apology, but said I really didn't want to miss my sister's wedding, as she's my only sibling. Well, boss woman went off the deep end and said that if I didn't show up to watch her kids this weekend, that I won't have a job come Monday. I replied with this exactly. Look, I'm so sorry that you're having a hard time looking for someone to cover. I can reach out to a few nanny friends I have and see if any of them would like to pick this up. This is a once-in-a-lifetime moment for my sister, and if it means I will lose my job, then sadly I will have to accept that. I love this job and your kids, and I hope we can work something out. I think it would devastate them. But you do what you need to, and I will accept that. She threw a few insults at me and said I'm abandoning them. I don't know what to do. I don't want to get a new job because I work so well with these two kiddos. My mom told me I was a jerk for so quickly accepting that I might get fired and told me that work just sucks sometimes and you gotta suck it up. Mom says I should have been an adult and just missed my sister's wedding. I don't know, should I? Am I really that big of a jerk for saying no? Edit, just to clarify, me and my mom don't have a good relationship. I didn't ask her for her advice. She was in the room with my sister, and as I was venting to my sister, I would have gone no contact at 18 if it wasn't for my dad. Can we please stop talking about it now? I've dealt with so much crap from her, but that's for another day. Not the jerk. Start looking for a new job now, and when they ask when you can start, list it for the day you're done with the wedding festivities. This woman must have a lot of backup options for childcare if she can so casually threaten your job like that and talk to you in that way. She must be used to getting her way to do such a 180 on you like that. You can be the one to teach her this valuable lesson about valuing an employee nice enough to give extensive notice in advance when they won't be able to be on the job. After all, you gave her plenty of notice along with reminders, and the fact that she's in the lurch now is because she didn't respect you and your personal time enough to make plans for this time months ago. While it's true that you do sometimes have to suck it up as an adult, that time is not when you've given your employer more than half a year's notice that you'll need this specific time off. It's very much being an adult to prioritize your sister's wedding over a job that doesn't value you enough to respect that you had arranged this time off months ago. Ugh, it makes me so sad that OP's mom is this brainwashed too. Does she really think OP is in the wrong here? This fear that you can be fired any moment for not doing whatever insane thing your boss asks of you is so real for a lot of people because it's true. You can be fired at any moment for almost any reason. / no reason in the good old greatest country on earth. I'm glad more people are realizing they don't need to accept this crap. OP, you're part of a changing labor movement. Learn your worth now and don't let your next employer treat you like this. You know it was an empty threat too. What is she going to do on Monday if she fires you? Between that and the yelling and the guilt trip, you know she's desperate for help. Nobody likes being taken advantage of. Well, what would you do in this situation? Would you cave in to what your boss wants, or would you go to your sister's wedding? Please let us know. I'd give that boss a piece of my mind. She'd definitely fire me by the time I was done with her. Won't compensate me for my fence? Then compensate me 100 times as much for my crops. The malicious compliance in this story is not mine, it's my brother-in-law's. Some of the details may be slightly off, but the overall story is true. My brother-in-law grows avocados in California. Several years ago, a portion of his ranch was ravaged by a wildfire, or so he thought at first. When the smoke cleared, it became obvious that the fire was caused by an electrical line that was blown over by strong winds and had landed on his fence, catching it on fire. Since he had been planning on diversifying his crops anyway, he decided he'd simply replace his fence, replant, and move on. To that end, he called up the electric company that owned the downed line and asked them for about $10,000 in compensation to replace the fence that had been destroyed by their electrical line. They denied any and all culpability in the matter and told him that he should sue them if he didn't like it. What the electric company didn't realize was that my sister, his wife, works full-time as a corporate attorney for one of the largest utilities in California, defending against cases just like this one. At first, she was concerned that this utility was a subsidiary of her employer, in which case there would be a massive conflict of interest. Apparently, legal departments frown on their employees when their husband is suing them. Go figure. Thankfully, after some investigation, she realized that the utility in question was completely independent of her employer, and at that point, the gloves were off. My sister didn't represent her husband because she's typically on the other side of the cases, But she did advise him on everything he needed to bring to court to win his case, and she helped him find a very reputable lawyer with a solid record of winning cases like this. Not knowing what they were up against, the utility persisted in refusing to negotiate, hoping that by forcing my brother-in-law to trial, he would simply give up and go away. Spurred on by my sister's insistence that he had a solid case, he called their bluff and went to trial. As it turns out, California takes agricultural damage very seriously, and the court conducted its own independent investigation. It estimated the total damages at around $335,000, which is over 33 times as much as my brother-in-law had asked for initially. Furthermore, there's a law in California that awards triple damages in cases where agriculture is impacted. So the utility that had been unwilling to negotiate over $10,000 was now on the hook for over $1 million in damages. When all was said and done, my brother-in-law confided to me that he would have gladly settled for the $10,000 in arbitration, and that it would have probably taken him over a decade to even sell $1 million worth of crops. The utility had to have their day in court though. My kid's teacher tried to steal her phone. My spouse, 41 male, and I, 41 female, have a kid that we'll call Hannah, who's 15. Last week, I picked up Hannah, and she said that one of her teachers, we'll call her Miss K, took her phone for looking at it during class. I told her she needed to keep her phone in her pocket during class. Then Hannah tells me that Miss K still hasn't returned it. I thought that was a little weird, but whatever. Get it tomorrow. Every day after, Hannah tells me that she asked for it back and Miss K refuses. On Thursday, I sent her an email asking when we can expect the phone back and that I would like her to have it for when she works this weekend. No reply. A whole week of this passes. Today, Hannah gets in my car and tells me she asked and Miss K didn't even answer. She just ignored her. I lost my patience and went into the school. I found Miss K standing outside her classroom and told her it was time she give me the phone back. She tells me that Hannah needs to learn to stop using her phone in class, and I tell her that I agree and that she can take her phone away every day in her class if she feels she needs to, but it's not acceptable for her to just keep the phone for this long. I made a scene. Students and teachers alike were staring, but she relented and said she would get the phone out of her office and came back with it about 3 minutes later. I feel like an idiot for not checking the phone when she handed it to me. I didn't give Hannah back her phone from my purse until she was done with her assignments for today, and a couple minutes after, she comes back to me in a panic. 2 things were wrong. 1, the screen was cracked and it wasn't before. 2, she had to re-log into her Apple ID, which we thought was odd. She then looked at her account settings and saw a second Apple ID with Miss K's full name and avatar. We think she may have merged the data or something too, because there are contacts we don't recognize on the phone. I lost it. Told Hannah she can't use the phone for now because I'm worried Miss K has access to anything on her end and sent an email to her demanding an explanation. There has not been a reply. I'm seriously considering reporting her to the administration and having her pay for the screen repair, but my husband thinks that that will cause her to retaliate on our daughter and that I might have overstepped by confronting her today. He also thinks it's possible she may have made a mistake and accidentally thought she was on her own iPhone or something, and that his IT guy could help with separating the IDs. He thinks we should let it go now that the phone is returned. I agree that he might be right about Miss K retaliating and I might be overreacting, but I'm having a hard time accepting the state that she returned Hannah's phone and just letting things go. Would I be the jerk if I report her? Not the jerk. Report this. The teacher took the phone for a week, damaged it, and had the audacity to log themselves in as if they owned it, and they refused to hand it to you initially. Report this ASAP. Not the jerk. You need to report her immediately. The teacher refused to give your daughter's phone back because she was using it herself. In fact, I think in many places it's actually illegal to not give back the confiscated item at the end of the day. I don't know what your husband is thinking, but there's no way that teacher accidentally used your daughter's phone. If I picked up a phone, I would immediately know it was not mine. Get that IT guy to immediately help with separating the IDs and ask them exactly what the teacher did on your daughter's phone. Use that as evidence when filing a complaint. Your husband thinking they should just leave it alone is ridiculous. It will send a message to his daughter that you will let someone mistreat their possessions and do nothing. She won't thank you for it. If daughter can be moved from that teacher's class, I would. Some have said maybe the teacher swapped phones. Even if she didn't, get more security on your daughter's phone. Password or pattern or fingerprint security, or a combination of the two of them. Am I the jerk for leaving a $0 tip at a restaurant? So my wife, who's 34, forgets her ID, and I, 33 male, order a drink at our restaurant we frequent often. Obviously, they wouldn't serve my wife a drink because she couldn't present an ID. We could be considered regulars with how often we are there. Regularly spend $150 to $200 a night and tip 20 to 30%. The people working tonight are not the regular staff. My wife has maybe 3 sips of my drink, not in front of the server, and I want to order another. The server refuses to give me another because he says we're sharing drinks and watching our table like we're some kids. Mind you, the whole time he sets up people in the restaurant to police us and watch our table when he can't. Barely gives any service, except when we're done with our food. I have no problem with them not serving my wife because yes, the law says you can't if they don't have ID. But you deny me, a grown 33-year-old man with a wedding ring on a second drink? Even if the board is there and they check to make sure people who are drinking are ID'd, they're not going to make a fuss if someone has a sip who is obviously over 21. None of your business what happens at our table. You're not top flight security. Left a 0 tip. Am I the jerk? You're the jerk. It's your wife's fault, not the server. Alcohol laws are strict, and businesses can lose their license over people like you. Then you leave no tip for someone making $3 an hour because your wife forgot her ID? But he had a wedding ring. He's a big boy. Don't they know you can't get married when you're under 21? OP, you're the jerk. I work in a senior living community, and we have to card guests occasionally. It's just part of the rules. You're the jerk. If you forgot your ID, you can't drink. Your wife forgot her ID. You should have either gone back for it or not ordered drinks. The restaurant could lose its license for serving you without an ID. I wouldn't go back to that restaurant, by the way. You made a fuss over your mistake and then didn't tip. And if you go back to that restaurant, your food will be 80% spit by volume. Wow, I get that OP is a jerk, but why are people in this comment section talking pridefully about committing an actual crime, and one that's particularly egregious in an era of ongoing lockdown in response to no tip? You're the jerk. I was a server for 22 years, and anytime someone no-tipped me, I made sure to let the kitchen know next time so they could add some secret sauce to their food. If you only knew what some of the liquids were that we stored in the back to add to people like you and your wife's food, you'd literally pop open one of the jars and the entire kitchen would gag. Edit. Funny how some commenters are acting like messing with customers' food is such a bad thing. Trust me, I've worked at plenty of restaurants throughout my career, and at each and every one, we knew exactly how to handle customers like you. Well, what do you think? Is OP a jerk or not? Please let us know. I think the biggest jerk is that server who's been spitting in people's food for 20 years. Why we wash our hands. So have you ever seen someone that works retail and washes their hands religiously? Allow me to give you a prime example as to why. So I used to work in my store's phone center, which is right by the front door. Since it was located so close to our most used entry, it would sometimes get pretty warm with the doors constantly opening for all the people coming in and out. So we had a little fan on our counter by the register, but behind a divider, so it was out of the view of customers. So I was working up there one day and had this old guy, 60 to 65 maybe, come in for me to help him with his phone. As he came in, I noticed he looked kind of sweaty, which was understandable as it was a fairly hot day. I also thought his hair looked kind of sweaty, but no, his hair was just extremely greasy, to the point that I saw it literally dripping. It was so wet from grease that it looked like he had dunked his head in water about 30 seconds before walking into the store. He gets to the counter and I attempted to greet him as I do for all customers, but I had to stop and pause halfway through to suppress the immediate urge to instantly throw up when his smell hit me. So it probably sounded something like, "Hi, how can I help you?" I'm not exaggerating when I say it smelled like someone had taken a porta potty that had been used for a week at a state fair, dumped it in the middle of a highway for a week during an extreme heat wave, and then this guy came along and rolled around in it. Also, he brought flies in with him, as in they followed him in, like at least 5 or 6 of them. It's not a stretch to say that smelling raw sewage would have been preferable. I subtly pointed the fan as much towards him and away from me as I could without making it obvious, so it would be blowing the nose hair singeing smell away from me, and tried to continue as best I could, while leaning as far back as I could without looking like I was trying to get away from him. He told me his phone wasn't calling out and he wanted me to fix it. Now, normally I don't have a problem holding a phone if a customer hands it to me, but this phone was the most disgusting thing I had ever seen. He told me how he had only bought it a couple months prior, when he pulled out a flip phone that was supposed to be black in color. What he actually pulled out was something that was once upon a time most likely black, but now was one giant stain that was covered in dry drops of brownish mystery liquids. It also had a yellowed screen, which should not be able to happen in the very short span of a couple of months that he had it. I told him to just set it on the counter for me. I used my only fingertips to touch his phone and use speakerphone when I made a test call. I got his phone fixed and sent him off all happy. Then I looked at my fingertips that I had used, and I'm not kidding when I say it looked like I had been handling a rusty nail for hours, at which point I once again almost threw up. Suffice to say, I used almost an entire bottle of hand sanitizer, then went to the restroom to scrub my hands till every bit of brown was off and my hands were completely red, then another hand drenching of sanitizer. I now impulsively sanitize my hands after every customer, regardless of whether or not I've touched anything from them. So next time you see someone who obsessively is washing or sanitizing their hands, just let them. You never know what crap they might have been through. We had someone come in to have someone look at her phone. She dropped it off, then casually said she would wait for us to work on it from home since she had such a bad staph infection. Phone was slid into a box with some cut-up cardboard and given to a manager to deal with. Then everything she touched was sanitized. Another time we opened a phone and out dropped some bugs. So yeah, so much sanitizer. Am I the jerk for telling my brother's wife that their wedding was not that good? My brother and his wife got married 2 weeks ago. His wife is one of those people who love K-pop, and as you guessed, much of the music in the wedding involved K-pop. We come from traditional Balkan families, both sides, and we expected some traditions to be honored. Traditional music, foods, practices. My brother didn't care about all that, and his wife was completely against it as well. We barely danced any traditional dances at all. Despite that, our side of the family tried to make the most out of it, and we tried to have fun. The bride's family on the other side was boring. They were very snobbish, barely getting up to interact with people as if they were better than everyone. They did have fun with their friends, as they said, but family-wise, the wedding was a disaster for the rest of us and not enjoyable in the slightest. My sister-in-law kept bragging about how perfect her wedding was and how much fun she had. Anyone could hear that and think it was the event of the year. I just couldn't stand her making a fool of herself, and I decided to be honest. And I told her, hey, since nobody's going to be honest with you, I will be. The wedding was not that good or special. It was different, but not in a good way. Stop going around bragging about your successful wedding planning when both families dreaded every second of it. It's embarrassing. My mother lost it on me and told me I was out of line and demanded I apologize. I said I'm not apologizing for my honest opinion. His wife then tried to defend her stance by saying how much fun she had, my brother had, and how her friends adored it and said it was the best wedding they've ever attended. I told her that they should attend one of those K-pop events then, not plan a wedding. I realized I might have been out of line after my mom called me to scold me for saying those words. She said I was right, but it's not something I should say out loud or hurt people's feelings. I tried to tell her I was just trying to be honest, because nobody else would be, and everyone just let her make a fool of herself. You're the jerk. She enjoyed her wedding. That's what's important. You sound incredibly rude. She wasn't making a fool out of herself. Grow up. Exactly. The only one who embarrassed themselves is OP and their big mouth. You're the jerk. I look forward to the day where as a society, we learn that I was just being honest, or it's just my opinion, are not excuses to say whatever you want without repercussions. Being honest or giving your opinion, especially when it's negative, when no one asked for it, is just being mean. It's okay to have an opinion and then lock it up inside your head. And honesty isn't a virtue when it's done with the intention to hurt someone. Am I the jerk for serving my husband's family mac and cheese for dinner? My husband is Asian and I'm American. We welcomed our firstborn 4 weeks ago. The baby is healthy, but I'm exhausted, haven't fixed my hair, barely able to shower, and cannot sleep. My husband's family had been pressuring us to visit to meet the baby. I tried to hold them off as much as I could, but yesterday I was surprised to find them standing on the porch. Turns out, hubby invited them for dinner. I was embarrassed and felt like I wasn't ready for visitors, judgmental ones at that. because the house was a mess. Anyways, my husband sat with them while I fed my son. Then later I asked my husband if we should order takeout for dinner. He said no, because his parents would find this rude and unwelcoming. He suggested that I go into the kitchen and prepare something, anything as long as it's homemade. I said fine then, went and made some mac and cheese. The reason I prepared this meal is because of how easy it is. Once I served the family, my husband's mom looked at me and was appalled. I noticed something was wrong. She asked if I really found it appropriate to serve her and the family mac and cheese. I asked why not, and she went on a rant about how disrespectful this was and that I clearly have no experience in what is right and wrong when it comes to hosting. I said, "Excuse me? Who said I signed up to host an unexpected visit from them?" And she took it as in I didn't want them there. Her husband said they were just there to finally see the baby that I kept them from seeing for an entire month. That's a whole month of his life they missed out on. We had an argument and they decided to go home. My husband said that deciding to serve his family mac and cheese was more offensive than serving them nothing at all. I told him I was too exhausted to cook their traditional feasts, that I was forced to learn from his mom. He took offense and said that I was being mean and disrespectful towards not only his family, but his culture. I went inside the bedroom to stay with my son. My husband stayed on the phone with his family for an hour, then kept giving me the cold shoulder and refused to eat what I cook in support of his family. I understand how some guests might find it offensive, especially his family, but I was just trying to make a quick homemade meal like my husband wanted. What's wrong with mac and cheese? Edit. Okay, so I'm seeing some commenters here offering to come over for some mac and cheese. It's amazing to hear that some people here would appreciate this kind of meal. It kind of makes me feel relieved and reassures me that I didn't mess this up entirely. Come on in, y'all. I'll be more than happy to serve you some mac and cheese. Some of y'all even offered to bring mashed potatoes and pizza. Would love to have y'all over sometime. This isn't a culture clash. These people are just jerks. There isn't an Asian culture I'm aware of that doesn't practice some form of postpartum confinement where it's expected that the new mother do nothing other than rest and bond with the baby. If they were so traditional, they should have showed up with food, offered to clean the house, and run a load of laundry while they're at it. Not the jerk, by the way. Well, who do you think is the jerk? OP or her in-laws? Please let us know. If you don't like homemade mac and cheese, you might want to get your taste buds checked. Am I the jerk for revealing we're rich when my wife constantly tells people that we're broke and makes me look bad with money? I, 31 male, have been with my wife, 30 female, for 10 years now, and she's always had this habit of making me look bad with our finances. Whenever anything regarding spending money comes up, she will always say how broke we are, and she doesn't have the money to do this or buy that. The thing is, we're doing well financially. We have decent jobs, and combined, our salary is roughly $125K per year. As of today, our net worth is more than $1 million, but less than $2 million. I had saved and invested a lot before getting married, so I gave us a good head start. I control the finances and take the lead, but we both agreed to living a very modest life. We both have our cars from college, for example, Honda and Toyota. She knows everything about our finances because at least once a month I go over it with her every time I deposit money in our investment accounts or our kids' college funds. For banking, we have an emergency fund and I budget everything else to go straight into investments. We basically stay right at $10,000 in our bank savings account and $500 in our checking account after bills. Edit. Most of the time there's more than $500 in our checkings, but once I pay our credit card each month, I then move anything extra. We always use the credit card, so it's not like we only have $500 to spend. Our credit card limit is $25,000. A few months ago, we had dinner with her friends, and they talked about buying a new car. My wife said something like, "I wish we could get a new car, but I'm always broke after paying the bills. We still have our college cars." Edit. Wife does not want a new car. She will go on to talk about if she had money what she would want to buy, and it always makes me feel ashamed. This "I'm broke" story has been happening for years. When we were driving home, I asked her about it. She understood we have the money, but it's how she feels because our bank account is always low. I said I can increase our budget or keep more money in our bank if she wants. Since we are doing well, I'm okay with spending more. She said no and again was happy with our finances. I explained that when she says we are broke, it makes me look bad and I feel ashamed. It's as though I can't provide for the family and or I'm bad with money. She doesn't see it that way. The same conversation has come up numerous times about us being broke. Recently, I reminded her numerous times it makes me feel and look bad in front of friends and family. I told her if she keeps saying stuff like that, I will reveal that we are doing well with money. I gave her a few reminders I'd eventually do this, but she kept going with the "I'm broke" story. At a dinner with her sister and parents, the same "I'm broke" story came up. I piped in and said, "It's weird to hear a millionaire say they're broke." My wife said, "Haha, I'm not though." And I quickly say, "We are millionaires and you know that. We go over our finances every month." Well, the "I'm broke" story stopped after that and the night went on as usual. A little later, the same thing happens with our friends and I use the same line. Now my wife is mad at me for using that line and revealing roughly how much money we have. She said it seems like I'm gloating. I say it's better than making me look like I'm running us into the ground financially. So, am I the jerk for revealing our net worth when my wife says we are broke? Edit. Final update for now as we have a long weekend planned. Some key points I saw a lot of people talking about and wanted to give answers. I'm pretty open to us spending money and I don't restrict her spending. She has the credit card to spend money monthly. Most of the month we have far more than $500 in our checking, but I move anything above to our investments once I pay the credit card each month. I know I won't have any big expenses then. If I do, we have the credit card limit and the $10,000 emergency cash. We live in a really cheap area and have a low cost of living. We never felt the need to upgrade until we wanted to start having kids. I didn't have to change our lifestyle much to save a lot. My job is in demand and pays well because nobody wants to live out in my area. So after expenses, I take home a lot more than I would living in a major city. Probably 3 to 4 times more net savings annually if I had to guess. She doesn't want a new car and has told me that multiple times. She doesn't like driving and feels comfortable with her current car. She doesn't know what she wants to do when she retires. I know I'll be golfing, games, and eating treats most days. I don't do any of this much now because we have kids, and they will be my focus for a long time. I maybe golf 1 or 2 times a month, and that's the only time I have my treats. I'll speak more with my wife about this. After reading posts, I think she may not feel like it's her money since she never saved much before we got engaged.
Support our channel by joining as a member today, and we'll give you a shout out in our next video.
Or come watch this video next. You won't believe what Karen does in that one.